2020 was, without a doubt, one of the most challenging years for the government of Grenada, which, as a small island state, continues to grapple with the unprecedented challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. But the strong leadership of the Keith Mitchell-led administration and tireless efforts of the Ministry of Health and all frontline workers have so far helped to prevent the case count from spiraling out of control, although the country did at one point experience a significant jump in the case count. I am Rikisha St. Louis in this special GIS National Report. Our team of reporters will highlight some of the challenges encountered in some sectors of the economy. Recognizing the significant negative impact the COVID-19 pandemic was having on the country, the government of Grenada spent millions of dollars to provide stimulus packages to certain hard-hit sectors to help cushion the effects. The tourism sector was one of those that took a beating as a result of the pandemic. With the borders closed and travel restricted all over the world, Grenada's growing tourism industry was virtually shut down. Christian Mitchell spoke with Honorable Minister for Tourism, who is expressing some optimism for the future.
The pandemic has dealt an unexpected economic blow to various sectors of the economy. One of the hardest hit being the tourism sector, which performed exceptionally well as recent as 2018, recording an impressive total visitor arrival figure of more than 500,000. So good was Grenada's performance that the country was named One to Watch in the Association of British Travel Agents Travel Trends Report for 2020, the only Caribbean destination to be included in the report since 2018. But the bright future the sector looked forward to in 2020 was not to be as a result of COVID-19. Over time, hotels were shut down and the borders were closed as the virus spread in endemic proportions. The government of Grenada decided this was the best way to protect the health of the country, although faced the stark reality that the lockdown would have resulted in drastic decline in revenue for the country. After a few months, the borders were cautiously reopened and measures that were implemented to safeguard the health of airline and frontline staff were enforced. A hopeful Minister for Tourism and Civil Aviation, Honorable Dr. Clarice Modest Cohen, believes that tourism will get back to normalcy.
I would say in Grenada, certainly the industry that was hardest hit was tourism. And because it came early, and also because we expect it would probably be one of the slowest to recover. So we're at the end of 2020. We're hopeful for 2021, but we expect perhaps full recovery somewhere 2022, 2023. So that can tell you the kind of impact it would have on the lives of many Grenadians.
Amid the pandemic, marketing strategies for the sector continued with collaborative efforts of the Ministry of Tourism and other contingent partners. After all, COVID-19 has underscored the need for cooperation.
As the world started to adjust to COVID, there were a number of training sessions, there were a number of webinars, meetings virtually, from the region, CTO, Caribbean Tourism Organization, CHTA, Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association, and worldwide, World Tourism Organization and so on, cruise lines. We were able to have meetings, and it consisted of topics like how to survive in a COVID period, how to develop a sustainable tourism, what the world is looking at, what is trending, what are people liking. So how do we prepare ourselves either for the COVID period or prepare ourselves for a post-COVID period. We also used opportunities to keep Grenada foremost on the minds of persons. So a number of videos were prepared showing the different sectors what was happening, reminding, I think one of them was Grenada Dreaming, so that you keep dreaming about Grenada. So as soon as the opportunity arises, persons would want to come to Grenada. We shared the assets of Grenada, which one of them was our safety, our security.
A visit to Grenada is an experience that cannot be forgotten. Giving a pure Grenada experience to locals and visitors alike is important.
We're looking at coming back stronger, building back better, engaging people, letting them have the experience of their life, because we want, when someone leaves this shore, whether it's a Grenadian living abroad in the diaspora who came for a vacation, or whether it's a foreigner, total foreigner, we want them to leave our shores having thoroughly enjoyed themselves and having experienced something that they probably won't experience anywhere else. And we're working on it, and we've seen success.
With climate resilience and the environment added to the Ministry of Tourism, there is hope that with the current trajectory and collaboration, tourism will blossom.
I think it's a good marriage between environment and tourism. I know it is a down time. It is a time that could be discouraging, but it's a time that is full of hope, given the fact that tourism has had that kind of buoyancy that doesn't keep it submerged for long, that it has been resilient, it has been able to rise against a number of odds, and that Grenada has a lot of wonderful, beautiful assets that are second to none globally. And I think there is great promise for our industry. I look forward to 2021-22.
Government lost more than $100 million in revenue with the closure of the borders, but it saw this decision as necessary to protect the health and well-being of the country and its people. In the agriculture sector, farmers, fishers, and others saw their earnings drop significantly because of the border closure and limited activity. Mina Booker reports on measures implemented to assist those hard hit. It included the establishment of an agriculture sector COVID-19 recovery committee.
Year 2020 brought with it many challenges for the agriculture sector. The push to provide food and nutrition security for all was threatened by the onset and effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The sector experienced substantial reduction in aggregate demand for agricultural produce due to reduction in activities in hotels, restaurants, and SGU in particular, and reduced spending power of local consumers, many of whom lost their jobs or had experienced reduced earnings. This occurrence negatively impacted the nation's farmers, fishers, agro-processors, and fresh produce vendors. The pandemic also impacted the operations of the ministry itself, which experienced delays with the implementation of its critical projects and was unable to deliver certain services to its many stakeholders for a period of time, the time of the lockdown in particular. It was not able to provide the number of plants which was projected in spite of the yeoman efforts expended by the management and staff of the propagation stations, who also worked during the lockdown period. Former Minister for Agriculture Honorable Yolande Bain Hosford had first-hand experiences of some of the challenges faced by the sector during that difficult time. She looks back at the period March to October 2020.
It was very sad for the farmers because a lot of the farmers couldn't go to their lands. We had to make sure that food has been secured during that period, and so we had to look at a lot of passes to get farmers to their land. We had to make sure that they get the gas to gas their machinery, the irrigation systems. So there's a number of problems that the sector encountered during that period. The poultry sector was heavily devastated as well in terms of not being able to get feed in time.
Loss in produce and minimization of trade left sector stakeholders frustrated. The ministry, she said, worked overtime to ensure that solutions to some of these issues were found.
To make sure that passes were given to the farmers, even the farmers who had to prepare their produce for exportation and all of that. There were several problems and they had several losses as well because the airlines and so were not operating, and so a lot of their produce would have had to be sold locally at a lower price, etc. So it has been a very, very difficult period. Farmers were getting anxiety attacks because that's their livelihood, and they had nothing else to really balance things in their families.
Government, understanding the negative impacts of the pandemic on the sector, undertook a series of activities to cushion the impact of the pandemic in the short term and foster growth and development in the sector. An agriculture sector COVID-19 recovery and transformation committee in the areas of agriculture, fisheries, agro-processing, tourism and finance was established to support economic recovery and transformation of the sector. Minister Bain Horsford highlights some of the measures implemented and the effects they had on the sector.
Mitigation and response plan was set up to look at the short-term and long-term programs for the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries. That plan really dealt with the short-term, long-term, medium-term and long-term activities for the ministry. So we moved quickly into setting up farmers markets because we realized that they would have to have alternatives to sell their produce, and so these markets were set up throughout Grenada. Decided to push the farm labor program quickly because we thought that in order to sustain the whole food security aspect of things, we must have the lands cleared. Extra lands have to be cleared. Some of the persons who have had abandoned lands and they were waiting for support, and so they were able to get their lands cleared up quickly by the farm labor program, and also introduced the backyard gardening program. That program, we thought that it was important that all single-headed households, persons who had some space in their backyard, could have a little backyard program where they can get the vegetables and the lettuce and other things quickly, so they can, and these are things that grow very quickly, so they can get it in a matter of weeks or months.
The ministry, understanding that it is a period where it is required that more be done with less resources, will be focusing on greater efficiency in the sector as whole, with the new Agriculture Minister Honorable Peter David designating 2021 as the year of organization and production. Minister Bain Horsford spoke to what she believes will be the focus.
Access to lands, access to support for farmers in terms of small business programs that would help them, because there is no bank that deals specifically with agriculture, and they have to go through all the processes, and sometimes it's very tedious. Pridia Lasny is really becoming a real sore word in the minds of people, every day. Although we had the legislation passed, but we must put the structure, the framework to make sure that the legislation works, because you have to respond quickly to calls. We have to enforce the laws. We have to inspect. You have to visit. There are people selling things to market vendors out there without, IDs and all these things. All of these structures have to be in place if we have to curb something like Pridia Lasny.
Plans of the ministry will be rolled out with the mindset that the challenges of COVID-19 will continue in 2021.
This is the GIS National Report Year in Review Special. We will return after the break.
Just touched down in Greens, right? Feels good. Then do what's right. Do your quarantine. No going out. No visiting friends until you're medically cleared. Be COVID-19 smart, man. Let's keep Grenada safe. A message from the Ministry of Health.
Welcome back. Diplomatic initiatives and trade are an essential part of the government's operations. For Grenada, these initiatives bore fruit during the challenging period the country endured. But friendly countries came to Grenada's assistance, even though they faced their own problems. Leslie and Johnson reports on the benefits of these diplomatic initiatives.
2020, a year of challenges, lessons, and hope. It was also the year that put into sharp focus the benefits of Grenada's diplomatic initiatives in the face of the rising challenges of COVID-19, initiatives which have served this country well in the past. As a small island state, Grenada must depend on its international relations, and so in the early stages of the emergence of the virus, Venezuela sent rapid tests for early testing, the People's Republic of China provided test kits and medical supplies, assistance from China was rendered at the state, province, municipality, and embassy levels. Cuba also played a crucial role through the provision of doctors. Former Foreign Affairs Minister, the Honorable Peter David, says this country's diplomatic relations, both at the bilateral and multilateral levels, have paid off in the fight against COVID-19.
In addition to medication, in addition to tests, there was the economic side of things. Recently, in fact, persons would have heard in the news the agreement signed between Grenada and the United States, the bilateral agreement on the suspension of interest payments on loans from the United States to Grenada, saving hundreds of thousands of dollars so that it can be used in the COVID fight. And this also was part of a multilateral decision, the G20, the group of 20 countries that established the debt service suspension initiative that sought to suspend debt service payments so that small island developing states such as Grenada can have used those resources that were saved in that period in the fight against COVID. So that was a bilateral and a multilateral result, a result of our efforts internationally. But in addition to that, the help we get from PAHO, the Pan-American Health Organization. That's a multilateral organization that Grenada is a member of, and the Minister of Health plays a critical role in PAHO, and the World Health Organization. Again, a multilateral arrangement that assists us in our fight with advice, with testing, and a number of other things done to assist small countries like us. And then we have the United Nations, where a lot was done through. So, all in all, our diplomatic initiatives prior to 2020, prior to COVID, certainly paid off in the fight we had to undertake against COVID-19.
An important thrust going forward is resource mobilization. Former Minister for Trade, Industry, Cooperatives and CARICOM Affairs, the Honorable Oliver Joseph, says from 2021, his ministry, which is now the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, International Business and CARICOM Affairs, will quantify all aid received from friendly countries so that an announcement can be made in the 2022 budget regarding how much was brought in through foreign affairs. The money, of course, does not stay in that ministry, but is used to benefit the country in various ways. For example, Grenada recently received $150,000 from South Korea for ambulance purchase. Minister Joseph also recently signed a memorandum of understanding with Japan, whose government provided $1.8 million to assist the fisheries sector. That money will be used mainly to clean up the sargassum seaweed. Minister Joseph says come 2021, more project proposals will be drawn up in a bid to attract grant funding to rebuild the country's economy.
We have a deficit budget, so we cannot borrow too much, and therefore the intention is to seek more grant funding. And most of these countries are prepared to give technical assistance if they cannot give financial assistance. We need to request the technical assistance from our friendly governments. And I think with that approach, we can benefit a lot more going forward in the new trend. As you know, the ministry has part of the portfolio now international business. So we need to do a lot of work in attracting more businesses into Grenada, and therefore the focus will be on attracting businesses and resource mobilization going forward.
So how will they attract more businesses? Minister Joseph says this calls for promoting Grenada and what the country has to offer. Dubai Expo 2020, which was postponed because of COVID-19, will be used to further promote the country. It runs from October 2021 to March 2022. A large contingent of manufacturers and representatives from the tourism industry will travel to Dubai for the World Exposition 2020. Minister Joseph says important as well is representation on the world stage, and that is a major priority for government. So the plan is to establish consulates all over the world.
And our objective, resource mobilization. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs need to bring in more. We need to get more grants, for example. We need to get more technical assistance. We have relations with a lot of friendly countries. They too are affected by COVID. But you have international organizations that we can seek more assistance from. So we'll continue to develop on the work done by the previous minister. We are now seeking to establish diplomatic relations with a number of countries and also to establish consulate because of a lot of places in the world, Grenada is not represented. So 2021, our major drive is to establish consulate throughout the world.
The education sector was hard hit, no doubt. Schools were closed for an extended period, but under the leadership of Honorable Emmeline Pear, Grenada quickly became a model for other countries through its online teaching and blended learning. We have a report by Annette Moore.
In 2020, the Ministry of Education, Human Resource Development, Religious Affairs and Information began the year on a positive note, not knowing that the wheels were already in motion for the advent of a health crisis of international proportions. When news broke of the declaration of the coronavirus as a pandemic on March 11th, the ministry quickly moved to ensure that education delivery could be maintained remotely as schools were closed during a general lockdown period aimed at keeping Grenadians safe. Honorable Emmeline Pear, Minister for Education, Human Resource Development, Religious Affairs and Information, explained how COVID-19 affected the education sector, how the ministry responded, and pulled through a period of unprecedented challenges.
So COVID-19, of course, we were not prepared. And so I would admit that we were caught off guard in terms of our readiness. This is something that was quite sudden. We started the distribution of supplies, increased sanitizing of our schools, and not only that, information. So we started by distributing information to our teachers so they can pass on to their students. Posters were distributed to put up at key points in the school on the plant, and we thought we were pretty much okay. And within a week, we had to shut our schools down.
The education minister said this caused the expected panic and anxiety, but the ministry kept its focus on how educational delivery could be made effective while working from home.
We immediately shifted into the mode of e-learning. So we briefed our principals as to different sites, different platforms that they could have used, different resources they could access online. And we came up with the idea of using WhatsApp.
Accelerating the completion of the M-Star platform, it was successfully launched on March 25th, along with the Spice Math TV program, shortly after the closure of schools. Special provision was made for students sitting external exams, with past papers and other relevant materials being uploaded to the M-Star platform. With opportunities to learn from home and place, the ministry concentrated on improving access to information and devices, internet access, and the ability of all teachers to use learning platforms to teach online.
We started the training online, and very, very positive responses. I interacted personally with a couple persons who said, I think this is the end of my teaching career. There's no way I can teach online. And after a couple sessions, I was shocked at the responses from those said teachers.
Meanwhile, the ministry worked with government to reallocate local revenue towards the purchase of devices for students.
We thought of starting with secondary schools. We ordered, and then more challenges. Now the shipment time is probably tripled. So what would normally take a week in terms of shipment is probably now taking 10 weeks, right? And not only that, it's probably about 10 times more the cost to ship. And you're not talking about shipping one box. You're talking about shipping 10,000 devices.
Corporate sponsors Digicel and Flow also zero-rated certain educational websites and platforms, meaning that no data was required to access those websites. The ministry also used some of their best counselors and math, sign language, and IT teachers to create video content which was aired on GIS and other TV stations. Programs included Spice Math, Spice Science, Remote Learning, and Counselor on Call to support both adult and student education from home.
I must say, following which, we got requests from outside of Grenada to share some of those. So that was also extremely positive.
Despite all the challenges, the ministry is happy with its decision to have had secondary school students sit their CSEC exams beginning in July prior to the reopening of schools.
As we can see from the results, our students this year did better than the students of the last 2 years. Credit must be given to all who were involved in preparing and helping our students to get through this period.
In September 2020, the ministry finally had a phased-in reopening of schools.
That first month of September was that phasing in, assessing of the students psychologically, academically, and otherwise. And the issue of how safe is the school becomes the next challenge. So the concern was if we were to have an outbreak in Grenada, our schools would be almost like a breeding ground for that.
To address this, the ministry made an appeal to Cabinet and the Ministry of Finance to add 300 additional cleaners and monitors within the school system, as well as the provision of additional cleaning supplies and sanitizers to the schools.
You're talking an additional maybe $2.5 million per term. If you're talking these human resource personnel, and if you're talking the supply, the actual supply.
Subventions to the schools that would normally be used for maintenance now had to be diverted to sanitization efforts, and utilization of masks was mandatory for everyone at the school. On December 28th, the Ministry of Education, Human Resource Development, Religious Affairs and Information, acting on the advice of the Ministry of Health, informed the public that the return of students to school for the start of the Hillary term 2021 has been placed on hold. This is deemed necessary based on the prevailing circumstances related to COVID-19. Meanwhile, the ministry is moving along with all other developmental pathways in the education sector.
We cannot afford to put on pause so many important things to be addressed in our education system. Looking at 2021, definitely we would be far more resilient, right? We would be far more prepared. That being said, we still have a long way to go. When I look throughout the region, I believe that we have done extremely well under the circumstances. We have also been able to support some of our colleagues in the region as we go along. And for us, we believe that as a region, we're in this together. But I want to express my appreciation to all those who have been so supportive during this period.
For the end-of-year review, I'm Annette Moore.
We take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Are you gonna wear your mask today? You see everywhere you go, there are rules you got to follow, so don't you say COVID-19 will delay. Take the opportunity to save your community. Don't be that guy, put a mask on your face if you're heading outside. It's your life, my life, more lives will be taken if we don't try. If you feel any symptoms, call the hotline. Stay inside until you feel fine. 6 feet away every day. Keep COVID-19 far from away. Keep Grenada safe. Be COVID-19 smart.
Welcome back. Sports and physical education is a critical aspect of the school's curriculum, but that as well faced its own setbacks, again due to the pandemic. Coordinator of Sports Curlin Peters spoke with the GIS about what they have been doing to adjust.
We have go to training our coaches on the Zoom platform, on the protocol protocol of dealing with sports in the sporting arena when it comes to COVID. We have introduced the Ministry of Health, done a couple of sessions with us. I have appointed a team to look at coaching, training, and development within that period. So we have done a lot of work on the, on the Zoom network, on the Zoom platform, to make sure that our coaches, that after that they come out with, with knowledge and better competency of how to execute the work when they went out. So we look at leadership in sports. We look at training session. We look at individualization. We look at specificity, some of the laws of training. So with the staff, we have done that aspect of it. We also, when we were able to go out, we also did a couple of practical sessions. We included Carrico too in that, where we look at training of all our coaches at all different levels. The team was, the leader of this team was Mario Christopher. He's our physiotherapist, together with Natalie, together with Jake Rainey. So they lead that training, education, and developmental program. We choose some of our partnership with the GA, other associations, Grenada Football Association. We are still able to have the cross country with a different format. The cross country was done where we collaborate with clubs. So we had 3 cross countries. We had one in Progress Park with the A Sports Club. We had one in Lassages with the Dennis and Trailblazers. We had one in St. George's with MVP, the Albert, and his team. I think that will be the way in which our ministry go in the way forward, where we instead of we going out there and executing some of the meet, we're looking to collaborate with some of the clubs, some of the associations, so that we can go out and execute the meet. So you will see a lot more competition next year, please the Lord. Where we empower the clubs, we give them maybe the financial support, maybe the trophies, the human resource personnel, so that they could go out and execute the community aspect of some of the competitions and some of the programs. We had collaborate with about 3-4 associations and select athletes between the age group of 18 and 26 with the potential, that have the potential and need the extra support to continue with training while they're able to achieve maybe the basic requirement that may needed so that they could obtain scholarship. And I'm very happy to say that if you listen to the budget, you will hear our minister speak about it. To me, that's one of our best programs going forward in the form of development of sports. So we have over 64 athletes. In general, when I speak about athletes, I speak footballers, cricketers, track and field persons that are in that program, where they will be getting a stipend every month with the other sign a MOU, and they allow them to train every day so that they could meet what is required so that they could obtain scholarship in the next 2 years. Although with COVID, this year we had sent out over, if you look at A Sports Club, over 4 persons went out to scholarship. They're in the settings for our next 5 persons that we have seen apply for assistance to go out on scholarship. So we must give the others the opportunity. So we not only have to look at it in the sense that the sports and the athletics provide opportunity for the athletes to get opportunity to go to study, to get a degree, the masters, to continue in the sport. And I don't think that we could ever stop doing that, what we are doing. We continue with the upgradement of fields. If you look, you see we have been working on a couple of fields. We started with Willis, Willis playing ground. We know that we do a complete overhaul. We take on the whole topsoil and packing it with gravels, doing some French drain with the company Hanover from Trinidad, Hanover Grenada Limited. We are in the phase now, almost 80% of the phase of putting in the topsoil over the gravels now, and we're hoping to roll, and there are future plans for the field. But once you attack and get the field back and up, there are plans for bleachers and other things that will come in to make sure. We look at the limes, we must say that we know that there have some previous work been done on the limes playing field. We went back and we make the adjustment with some of the topsoil that needed to be done, the drainage issue. Right now we're in this condition of fencing the area, and we're looking for next year, please the Lord, that works with assisting in building the drain towards the road and putting a row of bleachers. We also did springs. We know that you also had a chronic drainage problem in springs, with it building on top of the road where the water is running straight down on the field. And we had addressed that issue also. So we're looking forward to at least these communities are important, all the communities. But these communities, we have a history of having good competition, having a strong community links and togetherness through competition. So we're hoping to see they resume some of the competition. For the schools now, we come down to the individual schools. With the support and through the ministry, if required, to execute the sports meet. I have known of a school that actually done some field events already in preparation to have sports. So once the school, individual school, we can have intercall and you can have no other sport if the schools does not have the meet. But what we're going to do, what I know we're going to do in the ministry for sports, we're going to give the support, as I mentioned, to the clubs. To the clubs, so that they could have the sports meet. So we could have a sports meet in Grenville, we could have one in St. George, we could have one in St. David's, through the club. So then if we need to have a national meet, then we'll have a national parish meet, a national zonal meet. But we will not sit by and we don't promote, we will not see that we don't have no competition. Right. So our plans basically to collaborate with clubs and even the association do well, because GA run the mini meets. We collaborate them and we do the KFC really meet, so that will happen. But what I'm saying that once this structure doesn't happen as normal, as we are accustomed to, basically we're going to do some of the clubs meet in the different zones and have a national meet for sure. For next year, 2021, we look at it at a different fold. We look at improving some of our venues, of our facility, upgrading. We also look at the educational opportunities for coaches. We look at better collaboration and more events through our associations. So we must look at that aspect. We look at making sure that the athletes are given the support so that we'll...
In the midst of it all, the government continues to ensure it meets the needs of the more vulnerable in society. Delroy Louison spoke with Honorable Delma Thomas about the accomplishments of the Ministry of Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment, even in the face of major setbacks.
The year 2020 has proven to be one of the most challenging locally, regionally, and internationally, forcing governments to introduce stringent measures to safeguard human and financial resources in the face of the growing COVID-19 pandemic. The situation is similar in Grenada, where the Keith Mitchell-led administration has taken a proactive approach to keep COVID-19 at bay. The Ministry of Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment, under the astute leadership of Honorable Delma Thomas, is one of the ministries within government blazing the trail with regard to serving the Grenadian people. During a one-on-one discussion with the Government Information Service, Minister Thomas touched on some of the major initiatives undertaken by her ministry for 2020. What could be seen as one of the greatest accomplishments of her ministry, the minister expressed gratitude to the People's Republic of China for providing a gift of 647 low-income housing units to the people of Grenada. The units will provide accommodation to vulnerable families.
This speaks to a better standard of living for our people, because people are looking for housing. There are people who are renting, who cannot meet their rent, who are on the verge of being thrown out. And so these housing units will be given to our needy and vulnerable families, our public officers, and we are happy that we will be able to deliver this housing. And I am also happy that we were able to make changes, because we knew some of the challenges we had with the first sites. And so in working, we were able to have Ministry of Works, NAWASA, and all those entities involved.
The villa in St. Patrick was the first site to be completed, and the remaining 4 sites are expected to follow in the new year.
We are hoping by February, March for the latest that we're able to assign and be back here with a handing over ceremony, keys to families, and so the other sites will come after, maybe 1 or 2 months after, because as they complete and once everything is completed, right, we are already in the process of listing the families who apply and having to do the interviews and all that, so that when you're already complete, when all the units are completed, then we'll be able in a short order to deliver it to families who are in need.
In March of this year, the Grenada Country Program of the Spotlight Initiative was launched under the auspices of the Ministry of Social Development. Grenada was the first OECS country to sign on to the initiative, which is a global multi-year partnership between the European Union and the United Nations to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls by 2030. The country will be provided with €2 million over a 2-year period. The Social Development Minister, who is known to be quite passionate about social issues, speaks to the timeliness of the program.
The Spotlight initiative could not have come at a better time. You know, no one was preparing for a pandemic. No one was preparing for all those issues that we now are seeing emerging as a result of the pandemic. Understanding that we had issues before as it relates to gender-based violence and abuse of women and girls. And therefore, the Spotlight initiative is a very, very important program which will aid in assisting in eradicating gender-based violence, so a violence against women and girls. We are working through that project in terms of eliminating gender-based violence. And so there will be a number of programs, 4 pillars, we will be working on in terms of legislation, you know, to look at what we have on the books and what is working, what we can improve on, and all the other aspects to eliminate. So there will be a massive education campaign in the media, social media, and all that, that will aim at eradicating, even providing support.
Following the issuing of a state of emergency by government as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic in March this year, the Support for Education, Empowerment and Development, or SEED program, introduced a community payment initiative, which still continues in December. This was a measure taken to mitigate the possible effects of the virus on vulnerable families.
We always have to remember to commend our staff, not only because a lot of times when you highlight in the media, you highlight when something is wrong. But we need to highlight the positive by our officers, and I'll always be their biggest champion to say that they are hardworking and dedicated bunch, and the SEED unit is no exception in terms of providing services. They had to work overtime during the pandemic period, and when we realized that we had lockdown and all of that, we had to come up with a plan as a ministry to ensure that these needy families who need support from government get it through the SEED program. And so we had to go at the level of the community to pay our beneficiaries. And so even now we are continuing to pay at the level of the community. And as you said, it was high risk for our SEED workers and our officers.
The minister applauded all her staff and other stakeholders for contributing to the community payments. After 2 months of assuming the role of minister in the Ministry of Health with responsibility for hospital and community health services, Minister Thomas has already hit the ground running, pioneering many activities aimed at improving health facilities in the country. She says healthcare is a priority and must be seen as such.
Health is not something to play with. It can't wait. A road may be able to wait. Some repair in your house will be able to wait. When you have a health crisis, you cannot wait, and therefore there must be a level of urgency and care and love, because you're talking about dealing with people directly.
Even in the face of a pandemic, the minister noted that quite a lot was accomplished, and all things being equal in 2021, she is hopeful that much more can be done.
We will be back with the final 2 reports after this break.
The care and safety of our nation's children are of paramount importance. Here are some tips helping your children deal or cope with stress during COVID-19. Create or increase a sensitive and caring environment for children. Praise them for being good. Hug them. Tell them you love them and are proud of them. Mirror or model the behavior you want from them, and they would want to learn from you. If children are separated from parents and family, allow them to have regular and frequent contact with caregivers via phone or video calls. Please call our helpline at 440-4787. That's 440-4787. A message from the Psychosocial Support Unit and the Ministry of Social Development, Housing and Community Empowerment.
Welcome back. Youth empowerment and development remains at the heart of the NNP administration, and despite having to shift its focus to fiercely protect the health of the nation, government did not waver in its commitment. We have a report from June Paul.
In the midst of the challenges of COVID-19, the youth population in Grenada remains resilient. The success they have realized this year is spurred on by the work of Honorable Kate Lewis, Minister in the Prime Minister's Ministry with special responsibility for youth development, who remained steadfast in executing planned projects and programs targeted at the youthful population. The Ministry of Youth Development now falls under the watch of Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, who has often reiterated government's desire to improve the status of young people in the country, and more so those in the New Imani program. To demonstrate its commitment to fulfill this promise, government made a 43% increase in the budgetary allocation for the Division of Youth for 2021, which amounts to $40.4 million.
The 43% increase in the budgetary allocation for the Division of Youth Development is quite significant, but most of it will be catered for the transitioning of our Imani trainees into sustainable opportunities where they can be paid adequately for the jobs that they are performing. And that is one of the reasons why we were able to get an increased budgetary allocation so we can deal with the transitioning of our Imani trainees. This is significant for us because youth development, once we implement our programs and our projects efficiently, it will benefit us as a country.
Minister Lewis says there are several priority areas on their agenda for the coming year.
2021 definitely is uncertain based on what will be happening in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic and where we will go as a result. However, as Minister with responsibility for youth development, I am definitely looking forward to that sustainable transitioning of the new Imani trainees who have been there for 5 years and beyond. Some of them we know that they have been there since 2013 and they are still into that program, performing very good at different private and public sector businesses. However, we believe that it is our responsibility to assist them in making that transition. And this is definitely our #1 priority in moving forward. Our other projects, we want to ensure we tighten up and get rid of all the challenges, the weaknesses that we encounter with these programs. The Empower program, very significant for our young men. We want to strengthen it, we want to build on it so that we can establish or we can realize the objectives of the program.
Looking back at the year under review, the Minister with special responsibility for youth development says hosting a series of youth debates at the parish and parliamentary levels were among their major successes. Also included on the success list is the hosting of roundtable discussions among the country's newly appointed national youth ambassadors. With renewed promises to develop transitional strategies and address flaws of the new Imani program, the Division of Youth also successfully launched Batch 7 of the program, recruiting 750 trainees.
The launch of Batch 7 of the new Imani is against the backdrop of the many successes we have had with the Imani program over the years. We have also had many challenges as it relates to transitioning of our trainees into from the program into sustainable employment opportunities. However, Prime Minister undertaking the youth division under his leadership provided clearer direction as to the way forward for the 40% of the trainees who have not yet been transitioned. And this is very significant for us because while we are proud of all the achievements under this program, the challenges and the weaknesses of the program is very important for us to deal with. And I am happy as the Minister with responsibility for youth development that we are able to launch another batch because there are thousands of young people out there looking for some form of sustainable engagement. And that is what we do and cater for them with the new Imani program.
The Division of Youth greatly anticipates in the first quarter of 2021 the soon-to-be commissioned Youth Garment Production Facility, a first for Grenada.
We have a goal within the Division of Youth to create cooperatives among our young people as a means of sustainable employment opportunities. The garment factory production would be the first or the pilot project as it relates to the cooperative formation among our young people established by the Division of Youth Development. We have Imani trainees who was certified in sewing at different levels and in the CVQ aspect in sewing and fashion designing, and they were pulled together and trained for the cooperative formation. We have already identified the factory or the building that will be used as a factory for the garment production center. Cabinet has given its approval to use the Pearls Community Center that will be retrofitted at soonest, and so that 2021 we will see the unveiling of the garment production cooperative. And this is significant for us as a division because it is one of the sustainable employment opportunities that we are engaging our young people into. And we are looking forward to the successful launch and operations as well as the implementation of the garment production cooperative factory.
The division is confident that systems put in place will ensure its programs and projects are fully executed and the holistic needs of young people are addressed under the dynamic leadership of Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell and Honorable Kate Lewis, Minister with responsibility for youth development.
And finally, Grenada's Climate Smart City project, which will see the transformation of the town of St. George's, making it more resilient in the face of natural disasters, is just one of the major projects of the Ministry of Climate Resilience and the Environment that has been affected by the pandemic. Abigail McIntyre spoke with Minister Simon Steele, who remains optimistic that key projects that have been placed on hold will resume in the new year.
Minister with responsibility for climate resilience, Senator the Honorable Simon Steele, has admitted his ministry has seen its share of setbacks this year because of the crippling effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. 2020 was supposed to be a big year for the ministry, with a number of key initiatives set for rollout. One of the major initiatives gravely affected was the ministry's golden project, the Climate Smart City project.
We were working with the IMF on a donor conference which was going to be hosted in Grenada, which was going to bring international development partners, financing agencies and institutions to Grenada to look at how the financing for a project, a program of this scale, which runs into the hundreds of millions of US dollars, how those resources would be raised. So those activities have been postponed to 2021. It is a setback, but again, it gives us time to identify those key initiatives that we know will make a difference, will be transformative, which will bring resilience to our shores.
On a global scale, 2020 was intended to be a big year for the climate change arena. Carded for November-December 2020 was COP26, also known as Conference of the Parties meeting. It's the largest climate change, climate negotiating forum involving all countries in the world. This year would have also marked the 5th anniversary of the Paris Agreement, where at COP21 on December 12, 2015, 196 parties signed a legally binding international treaty in climate change. The agreement was aimed at limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels.
So the postponement of this major international meeting where agreement was supposed to be reached on key measures to protect our planet been postponed to 2021 understandably because of the pandemic. However, it gives the global community time and space to look at those measures, look at some of the difficult decisions that need to be made globally to resolve some of these outstanding issues. Also, at this time of year, it's typically the busiest time of year in terms of international conventions, international meetings. Those meetings have continued, but via the new medium of Zoom, this virtual world that we now find ourselves in. And what is noticeable, what is actually quite remarkable, is a consensus by the developed countries of the world just how vulnerable, especially small island developing states are, not just from the physical threats of climate change, hurricanes, droughts, floods, etc., all of those things that have been well ventilated, but the realization that a health pandemic such as COVID and the economic fallout from it, how that strips bare the vulnerabilities that we have. And there is a coming together for the first time of international thinking in terms of some of the additional efforts that need to be made to build resilience in countries such as Grenada.
Senator Steele believes that 2021 will have its challenges, but believes with all partners working together, much can be achieved.
And I think what we're going to find is a call beyond our basic responsibilities, but a general call to work even closer together, holistically as government, as a nation, in order to achieve the things that we need to do in the year ahead to re-stimulate our economy, get the recovery moving, to create jobs for our people, and to do all that we can to remain safe in this very, very difficult time.
Minister for Climate Resilience, Senator the Honourable Simon Steele.
That report brought the curtains down on this special GIS National Report. On behalf of the entire news and production team, I am Rikisha St. Louis, wishing you a prosperous and safe 2021. Thank you for joining us.